This video is sponsored by Epidemic Sound. What's up guys, it's Mabo here. In today's video I want to talk about the art of filming handheld. I'm going to tell you why I love filming handheld and why I prefer shooting handheld in most cases over a gimbal, and why handheld shooting, when executed right, has some magic to it. Let's go! So, why do I like shooting handheld? I really think it transmits a certain look, which is different from controlled shots like on a gimbal or steady shots without any movement. I think it transmits like an organic vibe. You feel more dragged into the scene, and also it feels like the camera, the point of view when it's changing, it feels like a living being which is like on the view for the next point of interest, crawling through the video frame. Especially these imperfections, these little rotations and angle, the controlled shakes make this overall organic and natural look, which I really like, and that transmits for me a certain magic when executed right. So the camera is like a floating living being directing you through the scene, moving to the point of interest with these imperfections, and it feels like you're more dragged into the scene, you're more part of it, and it has this like discovery, this fragile discovery vibe. I really got fascinated by watching movies of the director Terrence Malick, working with my favorite cameraman Emmanuel Lubezki. They're working a lot with the camera kind of floating through the scene, pointing towards point of interests, switching to different people, to stuff happening. And let me just show you an excerpt of Thomas Flight's video. Why do Terrence Malick's videos look like this?
The camera movement is often very unmotivated and subjective. The movement isn't clearly motivated by the movement of objects in the frame, but the movement doesn't seem to be marking a specific emotional beat for the characters in the way a crash zoom often would. Instead, the camera seems to have a life of its own and interests of its own. Natalie Portman, talking about her work on Knight of Cups, described Lubezki and his Steadicam operator Jorg Widmer, who would go on to be Malick's cinematographer for A Hidden Life, as actors in the film. They are a part of the scene with you. You're dancing with them constantly, and you're acting with them personally. We can even see in the behind-the-scenes footage from Song to Song that at one point they just hand the camera over to Ryan Gosling and let him do some shooting. But it's not just the visual elements of a shot like this that make it stand out. It's how these shots are positioned and used inside the films that makes them unique.
So as you see, the camera is sort of integrated in the scene, and the actors also act with the camera as if it was a human being. That makes this so special. It makes you feel like you're watching this scene through someone's eyes who's really there and really experiencing the situation and observing like a curious child who is walking through the world and looking, oh, what's going on there? Oh, what's happening there? Oh, that's interesting. A lot of these shots are not filmed completely handheld by Lubezki. He's also using a rig for camera weight reasons and also to have a little bit more stabilization. But I think still with the rig you got these rotation shifts while walking, and it just feels more organic in comparison to an electronic gimbal where this human walking movement is dragged out completely. So don't get me wrong guys, gimbal shots definitely have their standing and their place in film for certain situations and certain scenes. It really needs this stable and like on rails look. So for example, the legendary hallway sequence in The Shining, the legendary Chosen One sequence of Neo in The Matrix, all these epic army revealing sequences at Lord of the Rings.
The blood of Rohan! March to Hell's Deep! Leave none alive!
In all of these scenes, unlinear movement and shakes would be only distracting and would drag away the attention of what's happening. So gimbal shots definitely have their use in film, and you should always consider what you want to express and what fits best for your shot. When I first got my gimbal a couple of years ago, I was so fascinated by the look. I was shooting almost everything, all the projects with my gimbal, but I more and more discovered that there are some limitations coming with this look. You're not so flexible in camera angle switching, in being flexible while shooting for small movements, direct movements. So it gives you an opportunity to have this stabilization, but also limits you in being flexible to choose the point of interest, to have these little movements you're only having when shooting handheld. So having the opportunity to use a gimbal for a shot is great. You should just choose wisely when to use a gimbal and when not, since you're achieving a certain look, and this should support your sequence or your story. As linear movement stands for stability and control and is great to reveal things, unlinear movement goes into another direction. In certain situations where imperfection, emotional sensibility and fragile discovery play a role, shooting handheld might embrace the shot and give it another taste. I also feel way more agile while shooting handheld. I can exactly decide how to adapt the rotation angle of the camera fitting to the movement of the subject. This symbiosis of a moving subject in front of the camera and the camera angle moving on par with the subject can just create another taste of composition or aesthetic, and yeah, gives you another level of flow. Let me give you an example of a fashion campaign I shot last year. I had a mix of handheld shooting and gimbal shooting to just give the thing more variety, and I shot most of these shots handheld since there was a discovery vibe in the first half of the video. Kind of a direction going through these creators' stories and what they were doing, especially for the last revealing shot with the creators united on the couch. A gimbal shot worked really well to have a last overview, a controlled, stable overview about the creators now arriving united on the sofa after their trip through the world. So this video is sponsored by Epidemic Sound, guys. I've been using Epidemic Sound now for over half a year. I really love the library of music and sound effects. There's always new stuff to discover. What's really special about Epidemic Sound is that they are working with stems, so you can download stems of a song, different layers, instrument layers, bass layers, melody layers, so you can modify your song really to your video, and that makes it really special in my opinion. With one subscription you can use anything on their website, use it and also monetize it, so check out the first link in the description and give it a try. So how do we achieve controlled movement and shakes? Some of you might be asking now, when they're shooting handheld, they're walking around, they get really shaky footage. These micro jitters just make the footage unusable. And I'm gonna give you some tips and how to control your shakes, how to control your movement to make the footage usable. Weight is the most important factor. The heavier the camera, the more controlled the shakes are, less micro jitters you have. If you're shooting like with a 10-kilogram camera, there are barely no micro jitters, so you can stack up your camera, rig it. I'm using my camera with a rig sometimes, or you can add like a battery pack. Yeah, just adapt weight, adapt accessories to the camera, and you will have less shakes. Second way is the way how you move. You should really control your movement, put the camera really close to your body, since the further you go out, the more your body is shaking and the footage gets uncontrolled. So hold it close to your body. Always hold the camera with two hands so it's getting more steady. And you should do the ninja walk. I don't know if you heard of it. So you really bend down with your knees. You make really small steps to avoid these noticeable steps on the footage, and you make this sort of called ninja walk. Tip 3 is shoot ultra wide. The more wide you shoot, the less shakes you will get. It's really hard to shoot like with a 50mm, walk around with a 50mm and get usable footage. You really need to shoot under 24mm. I'm shooting with my 16 to 35mm. When you're going 60mm or even lower, shakes get really bearable in combination with the ninja walk and some weight on the camera. camera, and it almost looks like you're using a gimbal. What also helps is to have some in-camera stabilization or some stabilization in your lens. Doesn't matter which, both are doing great jobs for filming handheld, and that's really a plus for shooting handheld. 4 is shoot higher frame rates. The higher the frame rates the shakes get better when you're using slow motion. So when you're slowing down the footage, the shakes get slower, they get not so distracted. And what also helps with higher frame rates is that in stabilization, the editing program can work with more frames and can connect these frames better in stabilization. So often if my footage is too shaky, or some parts are, I'm using stabilization and slow motion to make the footage usable. So in conclusion, guys, handheld filming is a great stylistic choice, in my opinion, really underrated. You can achieve a really organic, raw look with this method. This can, when chosen wisely, add a certain feeling to a scene, embrace it and make it even more special. I love this look and I want to sharpen it this year. Follow me on the way. That's what this video, guys. I hope you liked it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. You can follow me on Instagram. I post some behind the scenes stuff and little edits over there. See you in the next one. Peace.